Part two of this video. We've now moved from the interest phase of the buying process into the desire phase, the D, stage two, phase two. Desire is a much stronger emotion than interest. Okay. We were talking in stage one about really finding out, really listening to the customer to uncover their wants and their needs, not just short term, but asking the questions that will potentially open the door for the client to expand on their wants and their needs. Because usually when you ask somebody about, what do you need for this to happen, they will tell you short term, because they're only thinking, or usually only thinking short term. I need to put out this fire, okay? Once you've asked the right questions, okay, and you've met the short term, then the customer will start thinking of, troubleshooting. Okay, well, if I put that out and I can see, if I put that out, then the next fire on the horizon is going to be this. And although I've put that out, okay, I need to do something different to put this fire out. So I've got a little bit of time to play with, because that's my priority. But then sooner or later, I've got to now come up with a solution for this need. And this solution for the short term is not going to cut it for this one. Likewise, once you put out this fire, okay, there's always another fire lurking somewhere in the distance. So when I talk about listening and asking specific questions, because remember, people tend to live in business, they tend to live in the here and the now. If you're at the sharp end, you're not thinking necessarily 3 months into the future, 6 months into the future, 9 months into the future. You're literally living the moment here and now. So if you see fires around, your objective is to put out those fires right now. Okay. Then you think, I've got a little bit of time before I have to put out for the next fire. In reality, you don't, but that's how you're thinking, because you're living for the here and now. So when I talk about really listening and really asking appropriate questions and challenging, your need is this, okay? What do you think is going to help you put out that fire right now? Fine, okay? Once you've done that, what's your next immediate need? Well, my next immediate need is not necessarily immediate. I've got a bit of breathing space, but my next need is going to be this one. That's their medium term. Okay, then you look at the same thing for the long term. Now, when we talk about desire, so now we have found out what the wants and the needs are. We've posed, if we could do X, Y, and Z, would that satisfy your short-term need? Yes, it would. Okay, so now we've got the customer now starting to think about, okay, there's light at the end of the tunnel, but it's still interest. Okay, we elevated the level of interest. However, now we want to look at the desire. Okay, we wanted to find out, okay, now you've seen how your need can be addressed. Okay, we've got to turn that into a desire. We've got to look at the ways in which that customer needs what we are speaking about, or potentially what you have to offer. They need it. It's no longer a want, it's now a need, it's now a necessity. This would benefit me in such a powerful way, and not only me, there are other people in my organizations that this would really have an impact for. That's no longer interest. That is elevated to strong interest, and it could elevate, and what we wanted to elevate into is desire. I need to have this now. that is absolutely fantastic. That would, release the noose around my neck, okay, or give me breathing room. I've got to have this, okay. The whole conversation changes, the demeanor changes, the vocabulary changes. It's no longer a theoretical exercise of interest. Yeah, I would be interested. Now it's, I need this. Yeah, you see how my demeanor, my body language is changing. I need this. Yeah, this would absolutely revolutionize the way in which we work. This is something we have got to have. Now we're in the desire stage. Now we can start to introduce our service to the customer, okay? In the desire stage. The interest stage, we've uncovered a lot of things, and it's interesting. Yeah, I didn't think about that. It's actually a really good question. So we've done all of that, and that's got our level of interest. We've elevated the customer's level of interest to a much higher level. So we started off at 1, it might have gone to 2 or 3. So we, on our numerical scale, remember our numerical scale, 10 was I bite your arm off, gotta have it. 0 was I have 0 interest. Well, we started the conversation at 1. Okay, so a little bit more than 0. We started at 1. Now it's moved to perhaps 2. Maybe if we're lucky, it's moved to 3. But our customer is much more engaged now. Now the eyebrows are raised up. Oh, okay, I didn't think about that. That's actually a really good question. I hadn't thought about that. Okay, so we've moved the conversation along. Now we've got to the desired stage where it's like, absolutely, I've got to have this. That would be such a benefit to me, such and such, such and such. Now the whole demeanor, the whole body language has now completely changed. Now we know we're in the desire stage. This is now where we start to introduce what our product or our service can do that meet and exceeds what our customer needs. Okay, not just for the short term, but we're now starting to introduce for the medium term as well as the long term, if it does that as well. So now the conversation that we are having is a much more powerful conversation. The customer is really highly motivated at this point in the actual conversation that we're having. Remember the buying signals that you're looking for, the whole body language, the demeanor of the body language has completely changed. Notice my body language. I'm, sitting back, shoulders are rounded, arms are relatively loose. There's no tension there, although my elbows are being supported by the arms of my chair. So I'm speaking to you. My hands are moving, and you can't see any tension in my body. It's not rigid. The movement's not clunky. I'm relaxed. How you know you're in a desired stage, look at my eyebrows going up, my eyes, I'm leaning forward, I'm now more animated, my voice, the tone, the speech, the delivery is getting quicker. Yeah? The adrenaline is starting to pump. Okay, leaning forward, look, the whole demeanor has changed completely. Now you are in the desired stage. The words in which I use will change. My tone of voice, the pace in which I speak now quickens. You're now in the desired state. This stage, okay, we want to still demonstrate to our prospective customer that what we are introducing is a necessity. It really is. It's gone beyond interest. You need this. Okay, you need this now. So we're elevating, we've gone beyond elevating levels of interest. What we're doing is elevating levels of desire. And just like with levels of interest, there are different levels of desire. Now, clearly, we're not coming in at 0. Okay, we might be coming in at 1, 2, or 3. We don't want our levels of desire to be 10. We don't want this. The reason we don't want this is there is another stage that we want our customer to go through. And if we elevate the level of desire too much, we will bypass this stage, which is an extremely important stage, and we don't want to bypass this stage. So we have to be mindful, we have to control the level of desire. Now, a lot of the times we will do that ourselves. Internally, we will do that because our emotional side is running rampant. What usually happens is the logical side of our brain at the moment has been relatively dormant. All of a sudden it will wake up, okay? And it will naturally take us to stage 3, which is the evaluation stage. The logical side of our brain, which has been dormant, if we are moving too quickly with our levels of desire, and we say, okay, yeah, I want to buy it. The logical side of our brain says, hold on a minute, how much does that cost? That internal voice you hear, you've experienced it, we've all experienced it, all of a sudden, it's like cold water has been poured on an idea that you created. How much does it cost? That's the logical side of your brain waking up, because your level of desire is moving too quickly. So you're going past 5, 6, and you're moving to 7, 8, 9, 10. The logical side of your brain says, whoa, hold on a minute, easy, tiger. We haven't spoken about cost. That's the evaluation stage. So it's really important. And again, in this course workshop we were doing last week, when we got to this stage, the experienced salespeople in the room were absolutely, salivating. You could see the saliva coming down. And it's like, yeah, just go straight in there. Now the customer's saying all of this, it makes the sale easier. Yes and no. We don't want it to get to that stage. We actually want to introduce the evaluation stage, so they don't come from a high and straight away go down to potentially a low. We want to keep the level relatively high, and we introduce the evaluation stage. So the idea is I get it to a point where, you know what, Paul, you're absolutely right. What you said makes perfect sense. It really, really does. We need this. I can't understand why we haven't thought about this before. At that point is when you want to introduce the evaluation stage. Okay, whether you do it, being proactive, or your potential customer does it. Whoever does it, okay, really isn't important. In an ideal situation, dependent on the situation. Okay, so if I give you an example, if I'm selling to the customer, if they do it because I'm confident in the conversation the rapport we've built, the conversation that we've been having so far, if they introduce it, it's not a problem at all. It really, really isn't. Or if I introduce it, it really isn't a problem. It really depends on the relationship, it depends on the conversation, and it depends on how you are as a salesperson. Okay, so there's lots of different ingredients that go into it. So at that point, we're now evaluating, or the customer needs to evaluate. This is the critical area of the process. This is the time where you, as the salesperson, you need to be speaking a lot less. It's for the customer to evaluate their process. If they're thinking about budgets and you don't know what their budget is, they're thinking about this. They're thinking about timescales, how it can be introduced. This is something that they need a bit of time to self-internalize. So at that point, you should not be speaking a lot anyway, but you let them drive the conversation. So it could be, okay, how much is your service? So now the logical side of their brain is now evaluating so far all the things that you've been speaking about with them. Now they're looking for a figure. So give them a figure, because now they need to put everything into perspective. So again, depending on the conversation and how it is structured, give them the figure. Don't try and justify your figure. Give them the figure. Let them mull over that figure. Let them come up with questions. Don't you jump in on the back of the figure and try and reiterate the benefits that they're going to be receiving. Remember what they're going through internally. They're going through all of the things that the both of you have been speaking about. So they had a small level of interest, and then you said this, and the level of interest peaked a little bit. Then they said this, and then that's what's going on. So they internally need to evaluate that. This is not necessarily working 100%. So you've said the figure, then immediately you've now said something on the back of that, then something on the back of that, then something on the back of that. They haven't heard all of what you have said. So introduce the figure and don't say anything else. Let them come back and speak to you with regards to that. Some of the things they might come out and say, well, actually that's more than I was anticipating in paying. Now you've got a basis to continue the conversation. So it's extremely important, once we get to the evaluation stage and we now start to talk about finances, that you introduce the finance up front and you say what the figure is, and that is it. You allow them to internalize first before you continue speaking. So let them, crunch their own internal numbers, their calculations, because they're weighing up the pros and the cons, all of the things that you've said, the benefits, what they perceive to be a benefit, what they perceive to be maybe not so much of a strong benefit, but it's a benefit nevertheless. They're doing all of that themselves. Allow them to do that. In the next video, what I'm going to pick up on is more in the evaluation stage, and then the last stage, which is the action phase. Now, if you like this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up. If you'd like to follow me, I am on all platforms of social media. Well, actually, that's not true. I'm not on all platforms, but I'm on Instagram, I'm on Pinterest, Facebook, YouTube. So please follow me. On my YouTube channel, if you'd like to receive notifications as soon as I make a video, please tap that bell icon. There's a bell icon, so please give it a tap. That way you'll be notified as soon as I upload a video. You'll get a notification that I've actually done so. If you would like me to talk about a particular subject matter, please leave your comments below. I read all of the comments. I might be able to respond to all of the comments, but I certainly read all of the comments. So please put your comments down below. Thank you very much for listening to this video, and I look forward to the next video that we will be having, which I will drop relatively soon, where we'll be continuing the buying process, more of the evaluation process, more of the evaluation stage, and more of the action stage. Until the next time, see you again.